Bonjour French 1. Today's lesson is all about telling what you need, as in telling what you need at school and asking somebody if you can borrow a supply, or answering questions if somebody else asks you, what do you need? Like if I walk by and you're not working, what do you need to get started? And then also shopping for supplies and telling what you need in a store and communicating your needs and questions in a store situation. So for this first part, we're talking a little bit more about in general or in the classroom, less about the store. First things first, general questions for what do you need. This first one is just general, what do you need in general. So if someone's mugging you, you ask them, de quoi tu as besoin? Which is, what do you need? Which is not necessarily what you would actually say in English, but hey, we're just trying to have some fun here. If perhaps at the beginning of the year you come home from school, you're getting ready to do some school supply shopping, whoever's taking you school supply shopping might ask you something like, well, what do you need for a specific class? The way that these two questions differ is that the second one you actually have to fill in the blank with something specific, asking what do you need for math class or science class or whatever it might be. Qu'est-ce qu'il te faut pour? Is what do you need for. Remember, qu'est-ce que, this really weird word right here, means what. And then il te faut is a way of saying what do you need. This is saying of what do you have need. This is saying what do you need. Kind of the same thing, just different order. But both of those are ways of asking somebody what they need for something. Whenever you know what you need and you need to ask somebody else for it, that's what this next section is all about. If you need to turn to your neighbor and ask him if you can borrow something, such as un crayon, which is a pencil. Again, the reason why these are underlined is because you don't always have to ask to borrow a pencil. You can say, this literally says, do you have a pencil to loan me or to borrow to me, is kind of what that's saying. So anyway, the way you would say it in French is, tu as un crayon à me prêter? The next one is still along the same lines, it's just a slightly different order. This is actually, could you, I know it's out of order, loan me your calculator? But again, calculator's only in there as an example. You could put anything else in there you want to. Same kind of question though, just a different word order and different way of saying it. The way you would say this one is, tu pourrais me prêter ta calculatrice? And then finally, if somebody does ask you what you need or you want to express what you need, if I come by and say, why aren't you working? You might say something like, you need a pencil or something along those lines. Two ways of saying I need. That's why there's two lines on your paper to fill in I need. The first is j'ai besoin de, which literally translates to I have need of. Remember, j'ai is I have. And then il me faut is an idiomatic expression, meaning it doesn't translate word for word. I know if you try to translate it, it says stuff like he is necessary of me. It doesn't make sense. So just memorize il me faut is another way of saying I need. If you want to fill in an actual item, il me faut une gomme, I need an eraser. If whoever you're asking for does not have the item you need, now I wouldn't just turn to them and say, hey, I need an eraser, and then look at them with a sweet smile on your face. I'd actually say, tu pourrais me prêter une gomme? Could you loan me an eraser? But if somebody doesn't have whatever you're asking for, they might say désolé, which is sorry. And then if maybe you're asking about a pencil, one way, remember, that you can say I don't have. We've learned this before, and I'm sorry I forgot to actually put a line for this on your paper. You'll need to add this one in. It's not there. But if you forgot how to say I don't have, the way you say I don't have is je n'ai pas de. So if somebody said, tu as un crayon à me prêter? Do you have a pencil that I could borrow? If you don't, you can say désolé, je n'ai pas de crayon. Sorry, I don't have a pencil. Again, the reason why this is not on your paper is because we've actually covered it before, but I thought you might have forgotten. If you do indeed have a pencil, though, and you're going to help somebody out, there are two ways of saying here, as in here you go, as you hand it to them. One of them is voilà, which, by the way, Americans are notorious for mispronouncing and misusing. It's not voila with a W, it's voila with a V, and it doesn't mean like ta-da, it means here you go, as in here it is. So voila is what you say as you hand it to them, here it is, or tiens. Tiens is kind of like a polite way of saying here, take it, that kind of thing. But either way, you can say those as you hand it to the person. So these are ways that you would talk about getting what you need at school. There's also a situation of if you need to get what you need at a store. So asking about and buying something is another thing I wanted to talk about as well. If you go into a store, you could say something like, if the salesperson asks that they can help you, you could use one of the phrases from the previous page and say something along the lines of, I need, which, il me faut un sac à dos, I need a backpack. And then they'll point you to the right department for the backpacks. But another way of saying, kind of expressing what you're looking for is to say, je cherche. Je cherche is just I'm looking for. Now you have to fill in something after that. Je cherche un sac à dos, I'm looking for a backpack. Je cherche une calculatrice, I'm looking for a calculator. But it kind of looks like the word, or sounds like the word search. And you're basically just telling the salesperson, this is what I'm searching for. And they might point you in the right direction, kind of thing. Now, once you find what you're looking for, you might have some questions about it. Some of those questions usually revolve around the price. Two different ways of asking a price. You'll notice that both of them have a spot for you to actually fill in the item. You could just point at an item and say, c'est combien, how much is it, because you're pointing at it at the same time. But if you're not actually pointing at it, you'll actually need to fill in the item. So you might say something like, la calculatrice, c'est combien? Which literally means the calculator, how much is it, which I realize is not the order that they put it in English. That's because, of course, they use different word order than we do sometimes. You could also say something like either il or elle est à combien, and then fill in the item. Now, the reason why it's il or elle is not because you're asking how much he or she costs. Those kinds of things are illegal. Instead, you're asking whether it or how much it costs, and that it is either a masculine or it or a feminine it. If we're talking about, for example, a backpack, sac à dos is masculine, so you'd say, il est à combien un sac à dos? How much is the backpack? Versus if you're asking about that calculator I mentioned earlier, elle est à combien la calculatrice? How much is the calculator? Calculator being feminine, you got to use elle. If you can't remember whether something's masculine or feminine, I'd stick with this one because you don't have to know. Whenever your salesperson goes to give you the price, they're going to say something like, il est or elle est à blank dollar, for whatever number, whatever price it is, or they might say euro if you're in Europe whenever you're asking this question, but they're just giving you a price. So if you're asking about that backpack, maybe il est à $30. Again, you're not saying he is $20, you're saying it, the masculine it, the backpack is $30, sorry. If you're talking about that calculator, maybe elle est à $30. It's $30, but again, calculator's feminine, so you want to use elle. If you do, this question right here should actually probably be somewhere up here near this question or this statement. If you were to walk into a store and tell the salesperson, je cherche un sac à dos, I'm looking for a backpack, one of the questions that they might ask you is, well, what color are you looking for? Because that's one of the things that, comes up whenever you're looking for certain products and things. The way they'll say, in what color, is by saying, de quelle couleur? And again, because we've learned all our colors, you could say, oh, je cherche un sac à dos rouge. I'm looking for a red backpack. Or je cherche un sac à dos vert. I'm looking for a green backpack. And you can get more specific at that point, and the salesperson can tell you whether or not they truly have the backpack that you're looking for. Finally, if your salesperson helps you out a lot, you're going to want to say thank you. And if you've forgotten how to say thank you in the French language, I'm going to add it right here, right now, on the fly. Merci is thank you. Always a good idea to use that, particularly if the salesperson has helped you out. And if you tell them thank you, one of the things you may hear back, and by the way, there's 2 lines of this on your notes page, and they're one on top of the other. So not to confuse you, on one line, à votre service, which literally means at your service. It's something that really only store owners and waiters and waitresses are going to use as far as saying you're welcome. A more appropriate one for all-purpose situations is je vous en prie. But again, both of them mean you're welcome, and you might hear a salesperson say either one. Make sure you bring these with you next class so we can do lots and lots of practice.